Hi, I'm Jason, and this is your commentary on Genesis chapter 5. Here is the written story of Adam's family line. When God created man, he made him in his own likeness. He created them as male and female. He blessed them. He called them man when they were created. When Adam was 130 years old, he had a son in his own likeness. He named him Seth. Seth is actually the third son. The first one was Cain and the second one was Abel. But here it's a little bit unique because it says he had a son in his own likeness, which ties back to verse 1 where God made him, Adam, in his own likeness. This will play an important role in the very next chapter. Adam lived 800 years after Seth was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Adam lived a total of 930 years, then he died. Now, 930 years is a really long time to live, and for us, it may make us question a little bit the validity of Scripture. But honestly, death is the part that doesn't make much sense. At what point does our body decide to no longer grow and to start deteriorating? At what point do the cells no longer regenerate themselves? Something had to cause it. So, of course, Adam had to die. We all have to die. But who's to say that 930 years couldn't have been a normal lifespan? We go further on with Seth, who lived 105 years. Then he became the father of Enosh. Seth lived 807 years after Enosh was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Seth lived a total of 912 years. Then he died. Enosh lived 90 years. Then he became the father of Kenan. Enosh lived 815 years after Kenan was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Enosh lived a total of 905 years. Then he died. Kenan lived 70 years. Then he became the father of Mahalalel. Kenan lived 840 years after Mahalalel was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Kenan lived a total of 910 years. Then he died. Mahalalel lived 65 years. Then he became the father of Jared. Mahalalel lived 830 years after Jared was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Mahalalel lived a total of 895 years. Then he died. Jared lived 162 years. Then he became the father of Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after Enoch was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Jared lived a total of 962 years. Then he died. Enoch lived 65 years. Then he became the father of Methuselah. Enoch walked with God 300 years after Methuselah was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked with God. Then he couldn't be found because God took him from this life. It's interesting the fact that Enoch walked with God and then God took him. He didn't live to be 900 years old. And the fact that they mention specifically that he walked with God is supposed to be a contrast to everyone else who was not walking with God. This is part of why I believe back in chapter 4, the last verse, at that time people began to worship the Lord. That's not exactly how we were designed to be. God is worthy of our praise, but he didn't create us just to worship him. He created us to walk with him. As far as we know, Enoch is one person who never actually faced death. Methuselah, his son, lived 187 years. Then he became the father of Lamech. Now, we just encountered Lamech in the previous chapter. These are not the same people. This is like saying Bob, John, Susan. They're just very popular names for the time. So you may see some similarities in the names. That doesn't mean it's the same people. This is Seth's genealogy, his descendants. It is not the descendants of Cain. Methuselah lived 782 years after Lamech was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Methuselah lived a total of 969 years. Then he died. As far as we know, This is the oldest record of anyone actually living, is 969 years. There's no record of anyone living longer than that. Lamech lived 182 years. Then he had a son. He named him Noah. Lamech said, "He will comfort us when we are working. He'll comfort us when our hands work so hard they hurt. We have to work hard. That's because the Lord has put a curse on the ground." Lamech lived 595 years after Noah was born. He also had other sons and daughters. Lamech lived a total of 777 years. Then he died. After Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, genealogies are a lot of fun, especially for this reason. Methuselah, oldest living person, 969 years old. Do you know what happened in the 970th year? We're about to find out with the story of the flood. One more thing. Genealogies, family lines, they can be a bit cumbersome, especially throughout Scripture when we get to Numbers and other places. And a lot of Christians tend to just quickly glance over these, but these are really important. There's a reason why it's here. How often do you see a very descriptive father by son, the ages that they were born and the ages that they died, in any other novels or anything that's made up? The reason why it's so descriptive here is because it's true. This is what actually happened. So whenever you get to a genealogy in Scripture, realize that, if anything, that's actually validating Scripture as being a historical record, as being true. Well, that is it for Genesis chapter 5. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time.